The Titanic is still down there. Right now, this very moment, the Titanic is sitting on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. We know exactly where it is. We've sent cameras down. We've sent submarines down. We've even sent tourists down. And some of those people never came back up. But that's a different story. So why hasn't anyone simply raised it? It sounds like the obvious move, doesn't it? The most famous ship in history, lying on the ocean floor. Raise it. Build a museum. Sell tickets. You'd make a fortune. And people have tried. Over the past 100 years, engineers, billionaires, and salvage companies have proposed dozens of plans to raise the Titanic. Some were creative. Some were completely insane. Not one of them worked. Here's why. First, how deep is it exactly? The Titanic rests roughly 12,500 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. That's nearly 2.5 miles, straight down. To put that in perspective, stack the Qutb Minar on top of itself 87 times, and you still wouldn't reach the wreck. At that depth, the water pressure is approximately 6,000 pounds per square inch. That's pressure capable of crushing your lungs in under a second. A standard submarine hull would collapse like an empty plastic bottle. In June 2023, the world saw exactly what that pressure does. The Titan submersible, carrying 5 people down to view the Titanic, suffered a catastrophic implosion. The carbon fiber hull failed in a fraction of a second. Everyone on board died instantly. The force was so extreme that the entire vessel was reduced to fragments scattered across the seafloor. That is what 6,000 pounds per square inch does. Now imagine trying to attach cables, position lifting equipment, and raise an entire ship under those conditions. In total darkness, in near-freezing water, 2.5 miles below the nearest breath of air. The second problem, weight. Let's say the pressure problem is solved. Now there's the weight problem. The Titanic displaces over 52,000 tons. That's the equivalent weight of roughly 36,000 cars. No crane on Earth can lift that. No cable system ever built could bear that kind of load from that depth. The tensile strength required doesn't exist in any material manufactured at that scale. And even if you could somehow generate enough upward force, the ship would tear itself apart the moment you tried. Because here's something most people don't realize. The Titanic is not resting down there in one piece. It broke in two as it sank. The bow and the stern are separated by roughly 2,000 feet of open seafloor. The bow looks remarkably intact in photographs. The stern is barely recognizable, a twisted, compressed mass of steel that doesn't even resemble part of a ship anymore. And even the bow, which looks solid from the outside, is extraordinarily fragile. Over a century of corrosion has weakened the steel. Sections of railing have already collapsed. The decks are buckling inward. If you attach cables and pulled, the ship wouldn't rise. It would disintegrate. The ideas people actually proposed. This is where it gets interesting. One famous proposal suggested filling the wreck with ping pong balls. Millions and millions of them. The theory, all those tiny, air-filled balls would generate enough buoyancy to float the ship to the surface. It's a genuinely clever idea on paper. The problem, at 6,000 pounds per square inch, every single ping pong ball would be crushed flat the instant it reached the wreck. Completely useless. Another plan proposed injecting the hull with petroleum jelly to displace the water and create buoyancy. Someone else suggested encasing the entire ship in a giant block of ice, which would, in theory, float it to the surface. Engineers at the BOC Group actually calculated what that would require. The answer, 500,000 tons of liquid nitrogen pumped to the seafloor, which is, to put it mildly, not practical. Then there was the idea from Clive Cussler's 1976 novel, Raise the Titanic. In the book, the hero patches the holes in the hull, fills the ship with compressed air, and the Titanic shoots to the surface like a submarine blowing its ballast tanks. A great scene. A dramatic movie poster. But it was written at a time when people still believed the Titanic had sunk in one piece. It hadn't. And even if it had, compressed air at that depth would require pressures no hull could contain. None of these ideas would have worked. Not even close. The piece that actually made it up. But someone did manage to bring part of the Titanic to the surface. And that story is almost as dramatic as the sinking itself. In 1994, a company called RMS Titanic Incorporated spotted a massive section of the outer hull lying in the debris field. A piece of the starboard side, roughly the size of a bus, with 4 portholes still intact. 3 of them still had glass in them. They named it the Big Piece, and they decided to bring it home. The first attempt came in 1996. The plan: attach diesel-filled flotation bags to the section, inflate them, and slowly float the 15-ton fragment to the surface. 3 expedition ships were on site. 2 full-size cruise ships circled nearby, packed with paying spectators, Titanic survivors, and celebrities. Thousands of people stood at the rails as the flotation bags were released, and the Big Piece began its 2-hour ascent. The bags broke the surface. The crowd cheered. Then a hurricane arrived. The storm tore through the recovery site. The lines holding the Big Piece snapped, and the 15-ton section plunged back to the bottom of the Atlantic. The mission was abandoned. 2 years later, in 1998, they returned. New plan, better equipment. This time, when the Big Piece broke the surface, it stayed. It is now on permanent display at the Titanic exhibition in Las Vegas, where more than 22 million people have come to see it. But consider the reality. That one piece took 4 years, 2 full expeditions, millions of dollars, and a measure of luck no one could have planned for. And it weighed 15 tons. The full ship is over 52,000. Something is quietly consuming the Titanic. While humans argue over what to save, something else is eating the Titanic alive. If you've ever seen footage of the wreck, you've likely noticed the strange reddish-brown formations hanging from the hull. They look like icicles made of rust. Scientists call them rusticles. Rusticles are formed by colonies of bacteria that feed on iron. They attach to the steel, consume it, and leave behind fragile, hollow tubes. Touch one, and it crumbles to dust. And when it falls away, it takes a piece of the Titanic with it. In 2010, researchers at Dalhousie University in Canada discovered something remarkable. Living inside those rusticles was a species of bacteria found nowhere else on Earth. They named it Halomonas titanicae, the salt-loving bacteria of the Titanic. This organism is specifically adapted to consume the ship's steel. Scientists estimate the Titanic is losing hundreds of pounds of iron every single day. The hull is thinning. Support beams are weakening. Entire sections of deck have collapsed inward. Some researchers believe the Titanic could be completely gone within 20 to 30 years. Others give it a century. Either way, the outcome is the same. The ship is disappearing, and there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. And perhaps that's exactly how it should be. Beyond the engineering impossibilities and the biological decay, there is another reason the Titanic has never been raised. One that has nothing to do with technology, bacteria, or money. It's a grave site. More than 1,500 people died when the Titanic sank on April 15, 1912. Most of them went down with the ship. Their bodies were never recovered. When Robert Ballard first found the wreck in 1985, his initial reaction wasn't celebration. After a few moments of excitement, the reality set in. He and his crew held a moment of silence on the deck of their research vessel, standing above the graves of 1,500 people in the darkness below. What Ballard saw on the ocean floor made that weight even heavier. The bodies themselves are gone. Over a century, the cold water and marine organisms consumed them entirely. But their shoes remain. Leather contains chemicals that marine life avoids. So scattered across the debris field, exactly where passengers fell, are pairs of shoes, sitting undisturbed on the sediment. A mother's shoes beside her daughter's. That is all that remains. In 2012, exactly a century after the sinking, the United Nations officially declared the wreck a protected site. Anything submerged for over 100 years now qualifies as cultural heritage. In 2019, the United States and the United Kingdom ratified a treaty regulating who may visit the wreck and what may be removed. The wreck is treated with the same respect as a cemetery, because that is what it is. So the real answer: we haven't raised the Titanic because we can't. The depth is too extreme. The pressure is too crushing. The ship is too heavy, too fragile, and too far gone. But we also haven't raised it because we shouldn't. Somewhere in that wreck, tangled in the corroding steel, settling into the sediment, are the last traces of people who never made it home. Families who sold everything they owned for a ticket to America. Workers who saved for months to afford a third-class fare. A Mexican lawyer named Manuel Urichurdu, who sent his mother a postcard of the ship the day he boarded, promising to visit her when he returned. She never saw him again. The ocean is taking the Titanic back, piece by piece. Day by day, the bacteria will keep eating. The steel will keep thinning. The decks will keep collapsing. And in a few decades, there may be nothing left at all. Just a faint impression on the seafloor, where a ship once rested. For the 1,500 people who went down with it, perhaps that is the most fitting end there is. Not a museum, not an attraction, just the quiet deep. And time, doing what time does.